Hey folks, I'm a little late getting this love letter out today because this last month has just been an absolute whirlwind. A few weeks ago I flew to Michigan to help my oldest friend host her son's wedding in her backyard, and then you all know we went to Vermont and we camped for 5 nights in the backcountry, and we came home and it was back to school shopping and parent teacher conferences and curriculum nights at school. And I'm also in the PTO, so there's been a bunch to do to help get the year started there. And getting back up to speed with all the after school stuff, violin and chorus and kung fu and soccer. And I know a bunch of you are parents and are in a similar boat that the end of August and September is just like being in a washing machine, especially if you have more than one kid. So anyway, it's been a busy time in my personal life, and also, I'm coming into peak wedding season here as we come into fall. And the past few weeks, I've officiated some beautiful ceremonies at all of these different venues. I've been locally in East Hampton at the Boylston Rooms, which is like an industrial mill, at Look Park here in my neighborhood in Florence, right on the lake, at the sanctuary at Willow Lake. Let's see, it was in Connecticut, Simsbury, Connecticut, at the Riverview, which is this venue right on the Farmington River. I was also in Wilbraham at the Starting Gate at Great Horse. That's like a golf course with these views of the hills of the Pioneer Valley in Central Mass. Also out in Boston at the Seaport, at the end of Boston's Fish Pier at this historic exchange building. And then next week I'm going to be in the woods in the Berkshires at the Dreamaway Lodge. So all these different venues and all these different couples, different ages, different backgrounds, different styles, different stories. But there is really one theme that keeps recurring with each of these ceremonies as I'm coming in to this busy season, and that is their parents' marriages, the couple's parents' marriages. And this is interesting to me because obviously we know that parents still being married at their children's wedding is not a given. And so to have all of these ceremonies back to back to back where that's been the case has really struck me. In particular, getting to see what this means for the couples I'm working with. It really gives them an opportunity to show their gratitude to their parents, not just for the love and the support that their parents have shown them in their lives and, in their relationship, but also their gratitude for the example of marriage, the model that their parents have provided them, and this sense of like pride and excitement that they now have the opportunity to sort of build on this legacy of marriage. And it's really been striking, and I wanted to just share some of the ways we've included that in their ceremonies. I love doing shout outs, so it was, one couple, each of their parents have been married for 39 years, so I got to do a little woo woo to mom and dad. Another couple wanted to include words of wisdom from a great aunt and uncle who had just celebrated their 55th anniversary. That wisdom was marry your best friend. Another wedding where they actually wanted to include participatory inclusion of these family members. So their grandmother they had come and do a ritual, a 3-chord ritual, or also known as a God's Knot ritual. So she actually came and led that. And then their parents came forward with their rings when it was time for their exchange of wedding rings. And the parents came forward and gave their partner, their child's partner, their ring with their blessing for their marriage. And then tributes. So I did a wedding last weekend where I said to the groom's parents who'd been married for 38 years, "You've taught him marriage means doing the little things that make each other happy, being generous with your care and support, and showing up for each other no matter what." And to the bride, who was primarily raised by her grandparents, and they had just celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary, I said, "From you she learned how to balance independence with mutuality, witnessed resilience through challenge, and experience the meaning of unconditional love. So these were things that came out of my conversation with them, and looking at the parents' faces and grandparents' faces as I said these words, and the tears and the cheers was just so heartwarming. And also, it's been interesting that anniversaries have been a theme in my own life. My mom and stepdad just had their wedding anniversary, and they're not super big on celebrating it, in part because they were first loves when they were teenagers, and they went on to marry other people and have families. And then about 7 years after my dad died, they came back into each other's lives. And my mom was like, we've just always been together in her mind when I asked about their wedding anniversary. But my in-laws, when I first met them, I remember we not long after celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, and then just last week we celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary. And they are a little bit more celebrators. For their 50th, we threw them a surprise party, and for their 60th, it was just a small dinner, just us to go out to celebrate. And I wanted to think about a way that could make this a little bit more special and meaningful, like not talk about politics and everyday life stuff, but to make it really feel honoring of their 60th anniversary. And so I thought about what I do with couples when we're planning their wedding ceremony. And I do, as many of you know, like an interview where I want to know about your history, I want to know about your relationship and your story. And a lot of couples love this, and it's like their favorite part of planning with me. And so, inspired by that kind of thing, I did some Googling, and I took some questions, and I'll share a link. This blogger wrote about questions he was asking his grandparents on their diamond anniversary, and I adapted them a little bit and came up with this list of 10 questions that we actually printed out and brought with us to the restaurant. And my daughter, my 11-year-old daughter, actually did the interview with them. It was so sweet. And it was great because obviously at this point, after so many years, I've heard a lot of their stories, but it was sweet to hear them say things again, but also like add details that I had never heard, and just to hear the things that they remembered about, like, their first date, or, their wedding day, things that were meaningful to them. And hearing in their own words, it just felt like such a gift to kind of be let into their relationship, and especially for my daughter to get to see her grandparents after 60 years of marriage. So here are the questions I'm going to read to you. I'm going to share them below as well, but these are the questions that we talked about through the whole dinner. How did you meet? And when did you know you found the person you wanted to spend the rest of your life with? How did you propose and accept the proposal? What do you most remember about your wedding day? How have you celebrated your other anniversaries? What are some of the most beautiful moments in your relationship? What were some of your most difficult life experiences? What do you like best about each other? What challenges are you still learning to accept in one another? What gave you the strength to stay together, especially through the hard times? And what would you tell someone getting married today is the key to lifelong partnership? Good questions. And it was especially telling those last ones, what gave you the strength to stay together? My mother and father-in-law both pointed to a real shared commitment, just a dedication to building a partnership that would be a shelter for them and for their children and their children's children, and sitting there at the table together, our generations. I really, really felt that. And in my card to them, I actually wrote, I can only imagine the highs and the lows and the messy, mundane middles that must have come through 60 years of marriage. But what you've accomplished is an achievement not just for you two, but for your family. And I thank you for the gift that your partnership has given all of us. I really, really felt that. And also what they shared, what would you tell someone getting married today? Obviously very kind words to me, but my mother-in-law pointed to the process that I do with couples, where we talk about the meaning of marriage, we talk about the significance of your vows, and we talk about your aspirations and intentions as a married couple. As she said, I would tell everybody to do that before they get married. They had a mass, they said traditional vows, and they've obviously figured it out over 60 years. But she said, I would tell anybody to take the opportunity to reflect, as I do with my couples, on what it actually means to get married and what these promises are actually going to entail. So heartwarming on multiple levels. Happy anniversary to all these loved ones who are celebrating, and just also an invitation to anybody who is married to kind of reflect on your own relationship, on your family, as what are you modeling, for your children and for the future, and kind of having a bigger perspective like you might get after 60 years of what it is you're about, which, in the day-to-day of back to school and the laundry and the dishes and working, it's easy to lose sight of. But, bringing couples into that perspective when we plan the ceremony, it's like, oh, so easy to remember. Like, what are our aspirations? What are our hopes? What are our goals? What are our beliefs? And, taking a chance to reflect like this on your own marriage, to kind of pan out and ask yourselves these questions, really gives you some more sort of juice for the squeeze, so to speak. And I would also just say, you might be in the situation where you don't have marriages that you want to model yourselves after. And so in that case, even more so reflecting on where you've been and where you're going and what legacy you're building is important. And finally, if you have loved ones in your life whose marriages have endured and you admire, taking time with them, whether it's an anniversary or not, to ask some of these questions, I think is not only like beneficial for you as a person in your marriage, but also just such a gift to them. I know my in-laws really enjoyed the chance to sit and reflect and share some of these stories. So, give one another the gift of your attention and your care by asking them. And let me know how it goes. All right, hope you all are well. Bye.